So we've been running a few foreground containers, and now we are going to run background containers. First of all, it's a kind of arbitrary distinction. Honestly, it's to me, foreground and background containers, it's a little bit like talking about foreground and background servers in a data center and saying, oh, a foreground server is a well, first of all, I shouldn't assume that all of you have been in a data center, but in a data center you have like racks and racks and racks and cabinets of servers, and they don't have keyboards and screens because most of the time that would be completely useless. So what you have instead is a little kind of rolling cart with a keyboard and screen on it, and when you need to physically like do stuff on a server, you get one of these rolling carts and you get in front of the cabinet, open it, and plug the keyboard and screen and do your things. So to me, foreground and background containers is the same thing, saying like, oh, a foreground server is a server where you have plugged the keyboard and screen. And a background server is a server where you have not plugged the keyboard and screen. And it's pretty obvious that normally an Apache web server or a Tomcat web application server should behave the same way, regardless of whether you plug the keyboard and screen on the machine. Of course, technically, you can pull some really nasty pranks on your coworkers by writing some code that detects if there is a screen connected and a keyboard connected and then changes the configuration of Tomcat, but that would be fairly evil, and in most actual scenarios that's not going to happen. So with containers, it's the same thing, like foreground containers, background containers. A foreground container is just a container where you have a Docker client kind of connected to that container and interacting with stdio on that container, but it's an arbitrary distinction. So for our first background well, not background yet, but non-interactive container, we are going to run a clock, and I'm going to do docker run jpetazzo /clock. So that's a new kind of image name. Instead of just being BusyBox or Ubuntu or Fedora, it's a username / an image name. The username jpetazzo, that's me, and clock, it's one of my images. So when I do that, it's going to download that image from the Docker Hub, and then it will run it. And yeah, that's a clock. It's not a super fancy one, and instead of showing us the local time, it's showing the time in like UTC or the GMT time zone, but that's still a clock. Okay, great. And then I'm going to stop it with Control-C, and yeah, I'm back to my prompt. Great. Now I'm going to run that container in the background. And to do that, I will use the -d option for Docker run. So Docker run -d jpetazzo /clock. And this is a little bit like putting an ampersand at the end of a command. When you put an ampersand at the end of the command, it runs in the background and you get like the PID of that command. When I do that, what I get is not a PID, that's a container ID, so it's a super long hex ID. And also the output of my container is sent somewhere else, not on my terminal. One little thing I'm thinking I should mention. The -d flag and all the flags that are specific to Docker, like I want this container to run like this, like that, foreground, background, etc. All these flags must be before the image name. All the flags that you put after the image name will be options for the container itself. So my clock container is running, but it's running in the background. If I want to see exactly what's going on with that container, I can use the docker ps command. a lot of the Docker CLI commands have been that are designed after equivalent Unix commands. So docker ps shows me not running processes but running containers, and this is like pretty wide display. So on that screen, it's not extremely obvious, but we can see Yep, that's image jpetazo/clock. It's running a command here like sh-c while something something. Spoiler alert, this is just running while true, date sleep 1. Yeah?
Where are you having the source of this container? Like from where are we downloading it actually?
Where are we downloading the container from? Yeah, so this is coming from the Docker Hub, and I will give more details a bit later. But basically, when I download Ubuntu, for instance, it's being expanded into library/Ubuntu. And when I'm downloading library/Ubuntu or jpetazo/clock, this is being expanded into index.docker.io/jpetazo/clock. So, for instance, if I wanted, I could do something like docker run -d gcair.io/something/something, and that would download an image on gcair.io, which is the Google Container Registry. Like I put like an IP address and a port number and an image name. So when I don't put an host, a port, and all these things, then that means download from the Docker Hub. So that's where the image comes from. And if the question is more on who made that image and how did it get there point, then I made that image and I pushed it to the Docker Hub. Yeah. Okay, so the nice thing with that is that if I want, I can start multiple containers super easily. I can just rerun that command, and now if I do docker ps, I have 3 identical containers, all showing the time in an infinite loop. It's pretty hard to find a container more useless than that, but